How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Pei, Daf 85 of Masechta Ksubis, friends. Well, oh my gosh, I feel like I start every episode the same way. How you doing there? Welcome back. That whole thing, stretch, krechts, yawn. Oh yeah, alright. What do you want me to tell you? What do you want me to tell you? Alright, today we talk about like people who are owed money, that kind of stuff. Fun stuff. Alright, let's jump in. Daf Pedal Beis, last thin line of the page. Yemar Bar Chashu. There was a fellow, his name was Yemar Bar Chashu. Have a masik bezuze bahu gavra. So Yemar Bar Chashu was owed money by a certain fellow. Shachiv, the fellow passed on to the Olam Emes. Friends, right now in the Yom Neroim, I bench everybody that we should all be written into the Sefer Achayim, in the Sefer of Tzadikim Gemurim. Let's go weiter. So Shachiv, so this fellow was not written into the Sefer Achayim, the Maaseh. And the fellow left over a boat. So Yemar Bar Chashu says to his messenger, Nu, Zil Tafsa, nearly. Well, I lent this fellow money. I don't know what's going to be with the money. He's got a boat. He says to his messenger, go chap a rein for me the boat. Go chap me a rein a boat. Alright. Also Tafsa. So the fellow went and he chapped it a rein. Now that's a scary duo. Rav Papa and Rav Huna bar Yeshua. I remember Masechta Brachis. Who is that fellow? Friends, we're going back almost 3 years now. But there was a fellow in Masechta Brachis who he encountered Rav Papa and Rav Huna bar Yeshua, and that was a fateful encounter. The mice they killed him. So this fellow chapped a rein a boat, and all of a sudden he's stepping on Rav Papa in Rav Huna bar Yeshua's territory. Risky move. Amrulay, they said to him, Atofis levalchov b'machim shechav lachem. Wait up, hold your horses, friend. You are chapping a rein for one creditor in a way that is sort of detrimental, that has negative implications for other creditors. And says that a fellow who chaps a rein for a creditor in a place that it sort of has negative consequences for others, lo kano, you can't chap it a rein. So meaning, what's going on over here? Well, so Yemar Bar Chashu, okay, well, how about this? This fellow, whoever his name was, Hahu Gavra, some fellow, he owed money to a number of parties. To Yemar Bar Chashu, Rav Papa, Rav Huna bar Yeshua, he owed money to a bunch of people. Now, Yemar Bar Chashu, so he went to get sort of what's it called? What's it called when you're like the first to market? I don't think it's called first to market, unless it is, but I think it's called the first, I don't know, there's like a certain advantage, like the first something advantage. I don't know, first something advantage. But it's not always an advantage, because sometimes the first people don't get it right and the second people do. But anyways, so Yemar Bar Chashu, so he went to chap a rein. Now Rav Papa and Rav Huna bar Yeshua, they said, wait a second, you chapping a rein so that you could save yourself is now creating a liability, a negative consequence for us, because now we're stuck. And one creditor that takes it, that benefits himself at the expense of others, it doesn't, right, lo kana, it doesn't work. So that boat won't belong to you. Tafsua inu, and instead they chapped it a rein. Rav Papa mamlach maluche, Rav Papa was rowing, Rav Huna bar Yeshua mamtach lo be'ashlo, whereas Rav Huna bar Yeshua was pulling it in with a rope. Each one was trying to make a sort of like a, make it be theirs. So Rav Papa was doing a bunch of rowing, so that he could chap it a rein. And Rav Huna bar Yeshua was pulling the boat with the rope so that he could chap it a rein. It's like the Olympics over here. If Papa says it's all mine, Rav Huna bar Yeshua says it's all mine. Pagavu Rav Pinchas bar Ami, so Pinchas bar Ami sees them. Amalu, and he says to them, Rabbi Shmuel Damit Avayu, the Rav and Shmuel both say, Vushetzvurin, Umunachin, Rishus Harabim, that you can only chapeh besaran if it's in Rishus Harabim. Omar Amrulei. So they said to him, Ononami, mi chrifusa denaira tafisna. Yeah, this boat wasn't just at the edge of the river the whole time. We chapped it around from the middle of the river. In the middle of the river should be like Rishus Harabim. Also the Kamid Rave, so they came before Rave Amalu, and he said to them, Kaike chivare, white geese, like old rabbis, Mishalche glime de inche, who stripped the clothing of men. Rav Nachman says, if you want it, you're going to have to chop it around while the guy was still alive. And you're now chopping it around after he died, so it's not, lemaise, it's not going to work. Avimi brei de Rababo, so Avimi, the son of Rababo, Hamumaske bezuze, he owed money bechozai to people in Bechozai. Okay, so Avimi brei de Rababo owed some money. Shadrinu biad chama brei de Rabba bar Avua. So Avimi brei de Rababo sent the money to pay back his creditors. He sent it with chama brei de Rabba bar Avua. Ozal Parinu, so Chama bar Avua, brei de Rabba bar Avua went and paid back the creditors. Omarlu, and then he said to them after he paid them back, Havu lishtar, now give me back the document so that, I can give it back to Avimi brei de Rababo, and he can ostensibly tear it up, and we'll put this all behind us. Amrulei sitroidinu, to which they said, oh no, you didn't pay us back for the documented loan. There was a milve al peh, there was an undocumented loan. We had lent him this amount of money, but undocumented, and what we received just now was payment for the undocumented loan. The documented loan still is unpaid, still needs to be paid. When you pay that back, we'll give you back the document. So now, Rav Chama brei de Rabba bar Avua is in a bind. He just paid back all this money to these people, so he doesn't have it anymore. What's he supposed to tell Avimi brei de Rababo? Avimi brei de Rababo is going to say, okay, did you bring back the document so that they're not going to be able to collect with it anymore? And he's going to say, look, I paid them the money, but I didn't get the document. He's in big trouble. So L'kamid Rababo, so he came before Rababo, Omar Le, and Rababo says to him, Islach Saidi de Praitinu, do you have witnesses that you paid it back? Omar Le lo. He says, no, I don't. Omar Le, so Rababo says, look, Migo di Yecholan Lomar L'hoy Dvar Me'olam, since these creditors would be able to simply deny the ganze Zach, deny the whole thing and say, look, you never paid us back Bechlal, Yecholin Nami L'meimar, they're also able to say, Sitroy Ninu, that this money was payment for a milva al peh, for an undocumented loan. Right? That since they, if they were completely lying, they would have just said, I don't know what you're talking about. You never paid us back at all. And since there are no witnesses, they would have been able to get away with it. But since they're admitting, look, we did get paid back, we got paid back for a milva al peh, they're believed. Because if they were lying, they just would have flat out denied everything, that they didn't get any money back. But from the fact that they're saying, yeah, we admit that we got paid, but we got paid for something else, and in the absence of witnesses to say that he paid them back so that they wouldn't be able to deny having gotten paid back, so since there are no witnesses to testify that they got paid something, so then, since they're admitting that they got paid on their own accord, but saying that it was payment for something else, they're believed. Now, Chama brei de Rabba bar Avua, what's his fate? Man, he must feel like a real shtunk. I mean, he must feel like a real shtunk. What a rookie move. Pay all this money to somebody before getting back the document? Amar Rav Ashi Chazina. So Rav Ashi says, well, it depends what the instructions were. Amar le shkol shitra ve'av zuzeh. If the instructions to Chama brei de Rabba bar Avua, if the instructions to him were first make them give you the document, and only once you receive the document that you can bring back to me only at that point pay them the money. So Mishalim, well, in that case, he didn't listen to the instructions. He first paid and then asked for the document. So he didn't follow the instructions. He's liable to pay back Avimi Brei D'Rababo. Havzuze Ushkol Shitra, but if the instructions were give the money and then ask for the document, well, Lo Mishalim, he doesn't have to pay because he did what he was told. He gave the money, asked for the document, they made up a whole story. He didn't do anything wrong, he did exactly what he was told to do. Viloi, we say that lemaise, le'aloche, that is not the case. Benkach uvenkach mishalim. Either way, Chama Brei D'Rababo is going to have to pay back Avimi Brei D'Rababo to Omle Takunish Dartich V'lo La'avusi, because Avimi Brei D'Rababo is going to say, look, I sent you in order to fix the situation, to pay them back and be done with it, not to now make a bigger headache for me that now I have to pay again. So basically he failed in his mission, and he has to pay back, right? Chama Brei D'Rababo is going to have to pay back Avimi Brei D'Rababo. There was a woman that a certain fellow had a whole bunch of documents, a whole bunch of loan documents that he deposited with a certain woman. Now he also owed this woman money. And then he passed away. And now she's concerned, how is she going to get paid back? So Asu Yorshim Katavi Le Mina. Now the inheritors come to this woman and say, look, you have all these documents that belong, right? Let's say I assume it's the children. So the orphans come and say, look, you have all these documents that belong to our father. We want them back. Amrulun, she said to them, Michaim Tafisnu, look, I chapta maran, even when your father was still alive, and therefore, I'm keeping them as payment. So they came for Rav Nachman Amrla, and Rav Nachman said to her, Islich Saide Ditva'ua Minoch Michaim. Do you have witnesses that they came when you were alive to ask for it back, and you said, no, I'm chopping it arayin? Vilo Yaivis Niale, and you didn't give it to him? Omar Leilo. She says, no, such a thing never happened. So, imkain, if so, have a tfisa delachar misa, well then it's only considered like you chapped it arayin after he died. But tfisa delachar misa, lo klumhi. And chapping arayin after death isn't considered chapping arayin. Ha'itza di chayva shvua beidina di Rave. There was a woman who needed to make a swear, a shvua, in the Bezdin of Rave. Okay, I guess, I don't know, she owed somebody money, I guess she said she paid it back, she has to swear that she in fact paid it back. I believe that's the case. Amr le bas Rav Chizde, so Rav Chizde's daughter, who was Rava's wife, said to Rave, Yodaina ba dichshuda ashvua. Rava's wife says to him, look, I know this woman who needs to swear, and I also know that she can't be trusted when it comes to oaths, when it comes to swearing. Meaning, she might swear that she already paid it back, even though she didn't. So Rava said, well, if we can't trust her, well then we'll have to make the other person swear that they were not paid back. Now another time, Rav Papa and Rav Ada bar Masna were sitting before Rave. And then a document emerged. Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says, Yodaina be dishtara priyahu. Rav Papa says, oh, I know this document, and I also know that this document has already been paid. That you can't collect it with it. It's already been paid. So Rav says to Rav Papa, Ika inish achrina bahade demar. Do you have anybody else who can join you in this testimony, testifying that the document was already paid? Amalei. Rav Papa says, nisht. He says, I do not. Amalei afal gavdi ika mar. So Rav says, look, even though you are saying that the document has already been paid, eid echod lav klumu, one witness is irrelevant. Amalei Rav Ada bar Masna. So now Rav Ada bar Masna says to Rava, 1 second, v'lo yeh Rav Papa kivas Rav Chizde. So Rav Ada bar Masna says to Rava, but shouldn't Rav Papa at least be like Bas Rav Chizde? Meaning, based on when your wife, Basav Chizde, said that somebody was not trustworthy, so you made the other person swear, and yet over here, right, meaning she just says that that's the case, and you acted based on her input. So how come the double standard here? How come when Rav Papa says, look, I know that this document has already been paid, you're not willing to listen to him? So Basav Chizde, Kimli Begava. So Rava says, look, my wife, I know her, I know my wife very, very well, and therefore I know that I can trust her. Like I can feel 100% confident that I can trust her. Marlo Kimli Begava. However, with Rav Papa, I don't know Rav Papa as deeply as I know my wife, and therefore I can't simply go based on his input when there's no other person to corroborate. Omer Rav Papa says Rav Papa Hashdo Omer Mar Kimli Begavi Milsi says Rav Papa that once Rava has just said that when you know somebody so deeply that you can trust them alone, well then Kigon Abamar Bri the Kimli Begave. Well, says Rav Papa, my son Abamar, that I know him so well. Kraina Shtara Apume, I would tear up a document based on his input alone. Kraina Sakadaitech, tear up a document? Well, how can you tear up a document just based on one person's input? Elimiraina Shtara Apume. No, I would sort of doubt a document based on his input. I wouldn't tear it up. I wouldn't go that far, but I would certainly, I wouldn't collect from it, at face value. There was a certain woman who was required to swear in the Bezdin of Rav Bevai bar Abaye. Omar lehu hahu baldin. So then the person who she had to swear to said, Teisi v'tishtaba b'mosin. The Baldin says, look, I don't want this woman to swear here because we don't live here. I want her to swear where we live, Efshir de michaspa umudya. Because maybe, since, I guess he feels that he's owed the money, and I guess if she's going to swear, I guess he's confident that she's lying. So he's saying, look, I would like her to swear in our city so that she won't be, have the audacity to lie among people that she knows, and hopefully then she will admit that she owes the money. Amr Lahu, she says to the Bezdin, Kisfuli zachvaso, look, at least write for me a document, so that based on this document that you will write for me, I guess that says that you can believe her, or that, some kind of document, I guess that I don't know, based on it, she would be able to get out of, what's it called? Having to pay. What does Rashi say? Okay, well I guess that they're a bezdin, and I guess in the maybe in that town where they live, they didn't have a bezdin, or at least not on the same level. So she says, look, now that I'm at a bezdin, at least do me a favor, write me a document that says on the document that I swore and that I got, and because I swore, I'm putter from paying, and then I'll go home and I'll swear, and then I'll have this document and zeh. So Amalu Rebeva bar Abaye kisvula. So Rebeva bar Abaye says, okay, you can write her this document, and we'll send it with a messenger, and then once she swears in her town, she'll get this document, and that's it. She's off the hook. Amar Rav Papi. So Rav Papi says, Mishum de asisu mimulae amisu mile mul yisa. So Rav Papi says to Rav Bevai, the son of Abaye, that because you come from people whose lives were cut short, as we've seen, I think at least on 2 other occasions, that maybe even 3, that Abaye comes from the house of Eli, and it says from the house of Eli that they would live short, right? That their lives would be cut short. So because you come from a household where your lives are cut short, you say things that are short, i.e. things that don't quite make the cut, kilu, aren't fully thought out. So ha'amar Rava, because after all, Rava says hayasharta dedaine, that if judges need to write sort of a what's the word, a certification, I think, of sorts, right, to certify that, right, that something was done properly, that if the certification of a document is written before the witnesses come and validate their signatures, psula, it's pasul. Alma, merzek shikra, because it looks like they're lying, right? How could they possibly write a document to validate a document? How could they write a certification validating a document before the document has already been validated? Right? That's obviously suspicious. So here also, it would look like the Bezdin is lying if they're writing that she swore before she actually swore. Vilesa. But the fact of the matter is, Rav Papi's question, I guess, is not true. That in this case they would be able to write this document. Midur Rav Nachman, based on Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman, Omer al Rav Meir, the Rav Meir would say, Afilu matzo mitzao ba'ashba. The Rav Meir would say that if they find a get, a divorce, a bill of divorce in a garbage heap, and they look at the document, they say, wow, it's mamish, the same names, the same towns, the same everything. Let's use it. V'chasmu, and they signed it. Right, the witnesses signed, v'nosnula, and they used the divorce document, they gave it to her. Kosher. It's take, a kosher divorce document. And even the rabbis, they only argue on Rav Meir specifically because it's a get, because a get needs to be written for her name. And they'll say that this wasn't written for her name, right? Because, you have to assume that it was written for some other person with the same name. But when it comes to other documents, even the Chacham would agree that if you find this document, it would be okay. Even though it was written, not necessarily specifically for this event, or it was written in advance. Because Rav Asi says, Rav Yochanan says, Shtar shelava ba ufro. So if, let's say, Reuven writes a document, or let's say Shimon writes a document that he borrowed $1,000 from Reuven, and he gives it to Reuven, and then on that same day, Shimon pays it back. Right? Shimon borrows money from Reuven. Maybe maybe he comes to Reuven and he says, look, I'm expecting to be paid back $1,000. I haven't been paid back yet. I need to pay somebody else $1,000. Can you lend me $1,000 and I'll pay you back when I get paid back? Reuven says fine. They write the document, and then that same day Shimon gets the money back and he pays back Reuven. And then for whatever reason, Shimon says, you know what, Reuven, I need another $1,000. So can they just use the same document? Eino chozer v'lo v'bo. No, you cannot use that same document. You have to write a new document. Shekvar nimcho shibudo, because whatever sort of shibud, whatever I don't know, how do you say shibud? Whatever lien the document would impose has already been waived when Shimon paid it back, and therefore you can't reuse that document. You have to write a new one. So the reason why they can't use it is because the lien has been released. But we are not concerned that, well, if you use this document that was written already in advance, it would look like we're lying. Right? That we are not concerned about. So therefore, we see here also that there would be no problem with the Bezdin writing that she came, that she swore, even though she has not yet swore, and then they send it with a messenger, and when she then swears, they can give it to her, and now she'll have this document asserting that she swore and that she's off the hook. Alright, so there's a certain fellow, and he deposited some money. No, he deposited 7 pearls, I think so, why not? He deposited 7 pearls that were wrapped in some kind of cloth. Bei Reb Miyasha Baibre de Bishur ben Levi. Okay, so a certain fellow left these pearls there. Shachiv, Reb Miyasha. So Reb Miyasha passed away, went to the Olam Emes. V'lo pokid, and he didn't tell anybody in his family, but oh, by the way, there's these pearls wrapped in this cloth, and they belong to this fellow. He never said that. So now what happens? Also, so they came before Ami, and the estate is saying, look, for all we know, it belonged to our father, and maybe it's ours. So Amalei, so Ami says, Chada di Yadayna Bey, from Yasha Baibre de Bishur ben Levi de Lo Omid. So Ami says, look, I know that Yasha Baibre de Bishur ben Levi was not a wealthy man, and therefore, just at the surface of things, it doesn't necessarily make sense that he would own these expensive things. So therefore, it would make sense that he was merely, guarding the deposit. And more so, Hakayoiv Simona, this fellow also gave a sign, right? He's it's pretty specific. 7 pearls wrapped in a specific, cloth. So because he's kind of giving details, and because I would assume that Rabbi Yasha wouldn't necessarily have these expensive items, we could trust this fellow, and they probably belong to him. We can assume that they belong to him. Now, we can only believe this fellow if this is a fellow who didn't often go to Rabbi Yashia's house. But if he often went to Rabbi Yashia's house, well then we have to be concerned that maybe it actually is not his, maybe somebody else deposited these items by Rabbi Yashia, and he happened to just notice them and say, oh, noted. When Rabbi Yashia dies, I'm going to go and say that they're mine, and I'm going to know exactly what they are, so I'll have a siman, and they're not going to be Rabbi Yashia's. So therefore, we would only trust this fellow if it's a fellow who doesn't often spend time by Rabbi Yashia's house. But if he often spends time by Rabbi Yashia's house, we have to assume that maybe they aren't his, and it's just that he noticed them, and that is why he's saying that they're his. Where am I? Okay, there's a certain fellow who had a silver cup by Chasa's house. Shochiv Chasa died, Velopocket, and he didn't tell his family that this silver cup he was guarding for somebody else. Also, the Karmid of Nachman, now they came before of Nachman. Amalu, he said to them, look, I know that Chasa was not a wealthy man. Ve'od, Hakayoiv Simana, look, this person gave a specific description, right? A silver cup. Right? He knew exactly what it was. Amar and Ella, we would only trust this fellow if he didn't regularly go to Chasa's house. But if he would normally go to Chasa's house, we have to be concerned that actually the silver cup belongs to another fellow, and this fellow just happened to have noticed it, and that's why he's saying that it's his. There was a certain fellow who deposited a silk garment by Rav Dimi Achvad Rav Safra Shochiv. Rav Dimi passed away, below pocket. He didn't tell anybody about this silk garment. Also, the comment to Rav Abba, they came before Rav Abba, Amalu, he said to them, Chadadi Adanabe, Rav Dimi Dil Omid, he says, look, I know that Rav Dimi was not a wealthy man. Ve'od, Hakayoiv Simana, and additionally, this other fellow gave he described the garment. It was a silk garment. Look, we'll only say this if this fellow didn't often go to Rav Dimi's house, but if you would normally go there, we have to say that, look, maybe it's take somebody else's, and he just happened to notice it, and that's why he's claiming it. So there was a fellow who was dying, and he says that my property goes to Tuvye. Shachiv, and the fellow passes away, also Tuvye. Comes Tuvye. So Rabbi Yochanan says, alright, the fellow says everything goes to Tuvye. Sure enough, a guy named Tuvye shows up. We can assume he's Tuvye. You give it to him. Amar Tuvye, v'asa Rav Tuvye. What if the fellow says that all of his possessions go to Tuvye, and guess who shows up? Rav Tuvye. The Tuvye Omar, the Rav Tuvye lo Omar. Look, the guy said Tuvye, he didn't say Rav Tuvye. Sorry, Rav Tuvye. The inish the Gisbe, ho Gisbe. But if he and Rav Tuvya are close buddies, okay, so then maybe, even though he's Rav Tuvya, maybe because they're so close, you refer to him as Tuvya, and then you can give it to him. Also, Shnei Tuvya, what if 2 people named Tuvya came? Shochin v'Talmud Chacham kodim. Well, if one of them is a neighbor and one of them is a Talmud Chacham, so we assume that he wanted to give it to the Talmud Chacham, right? He's dying, he wanted to have one last chance to do something good in his life, so he gave his property to a Talmud Chacham. Very nice. Talmud Chacham, kodim, fine. Karev v'Talmud Chacham, if it's a relative and a Talmud Chacham, right? There are 2 Tuvyas, one's a relative, one's a Talmud Chacham. Talmud Chacham kodim, so the Talmud Chacham gets precedence. Ibarlu, they ask the kasha, Shachin v'Karev mai. What about if one of them is a relative and one of them is a neighbor? Tashma, the pasuk says, Tov Shachin Karev me'ach rachok, a close neighbor is better than a distant brother, and therefore give it to the close neighbor. Shneim krovim v'shneim shchenim v'shneim chachomim. What if, look, they're both relatives, or they're both neighbors, or they're both Talmidei Chachomim? Shuda Dedaina. Well, then it's up to the Bezdin to determine, who this fellow was closer with and who it would make sense that he would have been giving all of his stuff to. So Rav says to the son of Rav Chia bar Oven, I will say to you, Epis, Milson Ma'al Yusa Dava Omer Avuch, a gewaldige thing that your father would say, that your father, where am I? Milson Ma'al Yusa Dava Omer Avuch. So Rav says to the son of Rav Chia bar Oven, he says, come, let me tell you something gewaldig that your father said. Hada Omer Shmuel, that what Shmuel says, HaMocher shtarchovo lachveiro, v'chazor umachalo, machul va'afilu yoresh mochel. Wow. Do you hear this? Here's the situation. Shimon borrows $1,000 from Reuven. Okay? Fine. Shimon borrows $1,000 from Reuven. So Reuven has a document that says that Shimon borrowed $1,000 from him, and therefore this document will entitle him to collect $1,000 from Shimon. Right? I don't know what I just said. Reuven has a document saying that Shimon borrowed $1,000 from him, so therefore that entitles Reuven to collect $1,000 from Shimon. Reuven sells the document to Levi, so that Levi now has a document, and he can go to Shimon and say, look, Shimon, you owe me the money. I purchased the document. I purchased the loan from the collection of the loan from Reuven. Levi now can collect it from Shimon. Reuven, after having sold the document to Levi, then says to Shimon, you know what, Shimon? I'm forgiving the loan. You don't have to pay it back. That's the case. So again, if Reuven sells this document to Levi, and then he says to Shimon, Shimon, I'm waiving the loan, you don't have to pay it back. Machul, it's waived. And even the descendant can be mochel, right? So therefore, if Reuven sells the document to Levi, and then Reuven dies, his son can say to Shimon, you know what, Shimon, you don't have to pay it back. Modeh Shmuel, but Shmuel admits, that if a wife brings a document of being able to collect a loan, she brings it into the marriage with her husband, and then she is mochel, she says you don't have to pay it back, she'eino mochel, it is not what's that called when you sort of forgiven, I guess, because they have equal sort of input onto that document, and therefore she alone cannot just waive that document if she brought it into the marriage. Friends, that was Daf Pehei of Masechta Ksubis. We talked a whole bunch about being able to collect like different loans and stuff, right? We continue talking about when you have a fellow who dies, now different Baal Chovs, and being able to collect these loans. Alright, that was basically the gist of Daf Pehei of Masechta Ksubis. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.